Thank you. I know today is really crappy, so thank you for coming out. It was very, very nice of you. Yeah, I used to live right at Lincoln and Magnolia when this place used to be up on Burbank Avenue, and then I moved in May, and they moved in May. Closer to me, I moved farther away. There you go. Sorry, I miss this place. Come here. If you live here, shop here all the time. It is one of my favorite places. It really, now I just want to shop. But I got to read this stupid book to you idiots. So here we go. I'm sorry, hang on. Make it feel special. Make it feel special. Okay, I'm going to actually read a chapter that I haven't read at any of my readings, and I figure it's kind of appropriate here. This is called The Song of Ulvak, and this is sort of a little intro chapter, and then a poem to my my last D&D character that I ever played before I stopped. Yeah, it's my Puff the Magic Dragon. So, so this is the prelude to the Song of Ulvak, and then then the Song of Ulvak is a poem. I'm gonna read a poem. Sorry. Here we go. Dungeons and Dragons was the game I played all through middle school and the first couple of years of high school until the possibility of sex hove into view. Before that, sex seemed like something for tall people who could run fast. And here's how you play Dungeons and Dragons. You got a sheet of paper, you got a pencil, you got 3 6-sided dice. On the sheet of paper, you wrote in a list these 6 attributes: strength, intelligence, wisdom, constitution, dexterity, and charisma. Got it? I know you all got it. You picked up the 3 dice and you rolled them 6 times. 1 throw of the 3 dice for each attribute. 18 was the highest, 3 was the lowest. These 6 attribute scores became your character. How strong, smart, wise, healthy, quick, and good-looking you were was all based on the roll of 3 dice. Then you chose a race, and not black or white, an actual genus: human, dwarf, elf, halfling, half-elf. Each race had advantages and liabilities. Dwarves were super healthy and resistant to poisons. They were also ugly. Elves were more intelligent and graceful, but were fragile. Halflings were small, but quick and quiet. I wonder if people realize how simultaneously Dungeons and Dragons was wildly progressive and archaic. Human beings were no longer black and white, male and female. We were all one, sharing the world, equal against the elves and halflings. Of course, dwarves weren't human. Then you chose a class. That'd be your profession: fighter, wizard, priest, thief. There were subclasses: illusionist for wizards, ranger for fighters, for example. Your attributes in your race determined what would be the perfect profession for your character. Dwarves made sturdy fighters, but were clumsy with magic. Halflings made excellent thieves. Elves were the best magic users. Humans could pretty much do anything. Dungeons and Dragons was very egalitarian when it came to the human race. And seriously, what's with those sissy elves, am I right? An 18th strength meant you were a nigh indestructible bruiser, able to bend bars, lift gates, twist the head off of any foe who dared stand against you. An 18 intelligence meant that as a wizard, you could memorize more spells, speak more languages, perhaps identify artifacts. An 18 dexterity made for a thief who could pick pockets and locks, climb walls, and backstab like a wicked finger of darkness. One of your friends acted as dungeon master. He designed the adventure and stock a subterranean keep with fabulous wealth, powerful magical items, and deadly monsters guarding them. You and your other friends and their characters would venture into an imaginary hole in the crust of a pretend world and defeat fantasy beasts to gain possession of unspendable gold, jewels, and gems, as well as claim the right to wield magic rings, enchanted sword, blessed armor, and artifacts, and scrolls that, when read, unleash wonders that could change reality. None of it changed our reality, of course. But winning a fantasy baseball league doesn't prevent you from having to go back to your stultifying tech job Monday morning, and there's no VIP champagne celebration waiting for you at the end of a fantasy Super Bowl. If the victories we create in our heads were let loose on reality, the world we know would drown in blazing happiness. And that was Dungeons and Dragons. 6 years of my young life. Roll abilities, pick a race, pick a profession, fight monsters, gain glory. All on paper, chronicled in graphite lead. There were, of course, endless variations on this theme. I'm giving you the basics. This is how I was first introduced to the game, and despite a brief flirtation with an adult group of players in my late 30s, perhaps the most gentle, sedentary midlife crisis ever on record. This is how I remember it. You were supposed to play your character. A fighter who wasn't too smart and was prone to walking into danger. A thief who might not be very honest and loyal. A priest who, though able to heal and banish the undead, might come into conflict with the edicts of his god. But it really came down to a casino-like game of numbers, your attributes and skills against any monsters you might encounter. You rolled those dice one last time to determine your hit points, the amount of damage you could take before you were dead. The monsters had their own hit points, and when you met, your axe or sword or lightning bolt spell dealt out so much damage, and you absorbed so much damage from the swipe of a goblin's mace, the touch of a ghoul, or the breath of a dragon. You rolled more dice, a meteor-like 20-sided die to determine if you scored a hit, an 8 or 10-sided die to determine the damage. And your fate was decided by which side faced up when the dice came to rest. Gamblers at 3 a.m. live on the internal rush and collapse that come from the flip of a card, a ball falling into a slot, dice resting on felt. My friends and I, in basements and kitchens and in the cafeteria of Seneca Ridge Middle School on a Wednesday afternoon, rolled dice and heard in our heads the sound of orc skulls being split, or oftentimes the gurgling groan of our mighty fighter falling on the blood-soaked stones of a mossy crypt, 10 feet away from a pile of gold and a vorpal sword. People committed suicide because of Dungeons & Dragons, or plotted to kill one another. These were exceptions that proved the rule. Dungeons & Dragons was harmless fun, unless you counted all the snacks and soda poured into developing youngsters who were aggressively immobile. Someone twisted enough to take a game of paper, pencils, and pretend to a terminal extreme would have found a reason to end their life or deal out death in a family circus comic, or the Bible. Still, I wonder about all my past characters. Raphael the thief, Nelgath the sorcerer, and Stumphammer, my profane, drunken dwarf warrior. And most of all, Ulvak, the half-orc assassin with his sentient sword, Bloodgusher. No, really. This was the last character I played before the gun of hormones fired me headlong into forever pursuing sex, and it shows. Ulvak was strength and violence incarnate. I was so addled with confusion, loneliness, and lust that I was in danger of falling out of the class clown clique I normally hung with, reciting Monty Python bits, paraphrasing Saturday Night Live sketches, trying to make Richard Pryor and George Carlin routines fit into our everyday conversation. Only now, puberty was a bag of cement lashed to my ankle, at least conversationally. Everything I thought and said now had this burning undercurrent of, how is this going to get me laid? And wit can't have an agenda. So I clammed up, and I spent the summer between sophomore and junior years swimming, lifting weights, eating salad and fish, and clumsily trying to re-roll the sorry stats I'd been given at birth. So Ulvak became my proxy during my clamp-jawed sophomore year. But he never made it past that summer. 18 strength. He could punch through walls if I wanted him to. I all but bullied my dungeon master into giving him gauntlets of hill giant strength, upping his strength stat to 19. 18 constitution. He could take the sting of a cockatrice tail, endure the deadly vapors of a green dragon's breath, or absorb a stab from one of his own envenomed daggers worn in bandoliers across his blast furnace chest, and shrug it off like a mild cold. 18 dexterity, fast. Two-handed attacks, thrown knives, always finding their mark, dodging an enemy's blows like an oiled serpent. I fudged some of these rolls, by the way. And finally, 3 charisma. 3. Repellent, frightening. Not only did I conceive of Ulvak as physically ugly, eyes crookedly set, sneering maw full of gray teeth, horribly scarred from a slime monster attack, but also obnoxious and unpleasant. Cruel jokes, quick to anger, slow to calm. He was comfortable being everything that in life I wished I wasn't. Even at my politest with my braces and cystic acne and snowman torso, no one wanted anything to do with me. So I created a fantasy character who had the strength, speed, and guts to back up every awkward remark I spent my days apologizing for. My comfort during the loneliest days of my adolescence was happy nihilism, which carried an ebony sword. I left the hideous, confident bastard on a demon-fueled plane of existence. I remember it exactly. Me and 3 other friends at our 4th friend's house, in the dining room, sitting around the table, paper, pencils, dice, and lead figures to represent our characters. The dungeon master had taken my figure off the table to the side to represent how he'd gone through a hell portal to a different plane of existence, where the sky was roiling blood and the ground was the scabbed-over corpse of a dead god. Ulvak stood in dragon hide armor and a tattered cloak, holding Blood Gusher one-handed. The demon who ruled this hell plane, I forget his name, parlayed with Ulvak, offering to send him back to the material plane of existence if he'd act as the demon's messenger and assassin. Ulvak served no man, monster, or demon. Knowing that slaying the demon lord would in effect destroy the hell plane he now stood on, it being a manifestation of the demon's ambition and avarice, he slung Blood Gusher like a burning shard from a graveyard explosion. It sliced into the demon from shoulder to belly, and Ulvak, the black blade of Gamosha, laughed as nameless damnation disintegrated beneath him and a sky of blood swallowed him whole. Then I went to a pool party. The first one I was skinny enough to swim out without my shirt. I made out with a girl, and the curve of her hip and the soft jut of shoulder blades in a bikini forever trumped the imagined sensation of a sword pommel or a spell book. Sorry, Ulvak. Will an epic poem make up for it? Here we go. With a poison blade and a list of names, I stabbed and slashed and made my fame. For gold, I took lives free of blame in the city of Gamosha. Gamosha, teeming, dreaming jewel, streets alive and quick and cruel, fighter, warlock, priest and fool could scheme for gold and glory. Each of us born 3 dice thrown, our strength, our brains, our fates alone. The sky gods chose our path, unknown to even them our story. Ringed with dungeons, breathing hell, filled with weapon, wealth, and spell, and few who ventured lived to tell, but those who did lived well. My sword was keen, my armor thick, no fighter's thrust or wizard's trick or curse from priest or thieving pick could pierce my heart of stone. So off one day I rode and rode into a dungeon's maw. I strode, some beast to worry, bait, and goad, then kill to claim a bounty. Then down a crooked hallway crept, across a spiked canyon leapt, into a chamber phantom swept, there sat my newest prey. A hissing demon, made of bone, a rotted tunic, eyes that shone regal, sat on silver throne, a zombie king, I reckoned. It made no difference, I'd been paid, a killer's contract had been made, this ghoul's head severed would be laid on my retainer's table. Then up he sprang and drew a scroll, and with a voice dry dark as coal, began a chant that pierced my soul and froze me where I stood. I wore 2 rings, one carved from jade and one of mithril, elvish made. The first one caused all magic fade, the second made me swift. Not swift enough, or so it seemed. The ghoul's eyes socket yet still gleamed, and then drew close, and grave mist steamed out of his hingy jaw. Your contract's null, yet you will live. I'm not the one your death to give. That fate awaits, but like a sieve, your time is running short. He said there's worlds above our own. We are but fancies, proxies thrown into a dream, not flesh and bone. We are but dice and paper. I'd long since learned, ignore the dead. The eldritch legions deal in dread and riddles, hexes, teasing led the foolish to their doom. But he touched something long suspected, and my confidence infected, weakened, shook, his words projected louder in that room. We're hero figures for the weak, who aren't yet confident to speak to girls or claim the life they seek, the ghoul said with a sigh. And so we wade through blood and gore, claim a treasure, bed a whore, accomplish deeds beyond a door the gods have not yet opened. Then all his matter turned to dust, away he flew upon a gust of death-fed wind. My body rust was all at once no more. Back in Gamosha, suddenly, or had it always bothered me? I sensed a subtle falsity in every face I spied. Their skills and defects, will and wit, seemed paper-thin and counterfeit, their fates the same and long pre-writ off in some far-off sky. The sky, I noticed, seemed to be of crumpled fool's cap, torn, and me, no longer was I a killer free to guide my own life's path. I sensed somewhere outside the land a soft and inexperienced hand that knew no steel and claimed no land had brought me into being, and so decided, in a flash, I'd not be tossed away like trash. My sword would rend and gnaw and lash against a pudgy god. At this point, the Song of Ulvac suddenly stops and is replaced by the transcribed lyrics of Phil Collins' One More Night, followed by an embarrassing and desperate love note. That is the Song of Ulvac.